Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Ethfinance EVMavericks channel. My name is JT. Big thumbs up and smash a bell if you haven't already done so. Today it's just me hanging here with some of our good friends on Discord. Looks like we got 696 Hanny and James in the house so far. More to come for sure. Maybe we could get one of the Mavericks to at everyone, let them know we are rocking and rolling. All right, the weekly Doots live stream is all about showcasing the best of the week from the Ethfinance community on Reddit. This is a read-along reaction series, and if you want to follow along, head to dailydoots.com. And dailydoots.com is designed by our very own Hanny Abu, among other websites. And while you're at it, go grab today's PO app. All the PO apps are going to public good, so appreciate anybody that wants to purchase that. Big thanks to Tricky Troll for capturing and curating each day's Doots, and the A word for curating this beloved weekly list. As always, if you know somebody who wants to get in on a piece of this action for a quick interview with the Mavericks, send them my way. All right, we're going to jump right in on the morning trinity. Let me switch my view here. I think I got it. Yeah, here we go. Oh, wow. Alexis KF EF got the Ethereum logo going with stars in between. Thank you, man. That's good. 696 ETH clocking in on a ratio of 0.062, and Wolf Parking clocking in on a price of $1,833. This is week number 35, I think, of crab season or something. But we love it. All right, weekly haiku by JS Tears, Viper Labyrinth, Compiler Masonry Tricks, Curve Pools broke a plinth. What is that? Compiler Masonry Tricks. Was this related? Wasn't there an exploit? I'm wondering if this is related kind of to the exploit that was going on. Was it AMD processors? I can't remember the story. This is deep. This is like JS Tears went meta on this. I even have to look up the word plinth to see what the definition is. Curve Pools broke a plinth. Interesting. We'll move on from there unless somebody wants to try to explain that one to me. That's a deep cut by JS Tears. Space Sider reporting the validatorq.com findings, the daily beacon chain dose, pending validators joining 75,500, and the number leaving roughly zero. Entry queue is down 1,600 from yesterday's number. It'll take around 31 days for the entry queue to clear. And around 6 days, the amount of daily validators that can both enter or exit will be increased from 2,250 to 2,475. That's coming up in 6 days. So by the time we do the next live stream here, it's going to be a new number. Hey, welcome Austin ST, and welcome Coco to Z Chat. These figures are based on the entry and exit queue at the time of posting. This can also be tracked via validatorq.com. All right, moving on to our ship post of the week, because we like to save the best for first. This one comes to us by way of Glittering Duty 4069. Consider this: the SEC consideration deliberating on whether they should once again reconsider their previous considerations, reconsidering the ETH ETF for deliberation and considering. Dude. Oh my gosh, that is freaking awesome. Consideration deliberating on whether they should once again reconsider their previous considerations, considering to consider reconsidering ETH ETF. I had to read that again. That is gold. Great job, Glittering Duty 4069, putting a smile on my face this week. Welcome to the chat, Dre11. Good to see you here. All right, so we are moving on dailydoots.com. Straight down the list. I don't know if anybody has anything they want to add to this conversation before we go. All right.
Yeah, it's just refresh the page.
Refresh the page. All right. Oh, yeah, you know what I need to fixing. Thank you. You know what else I need to do? I need to go through our Doots list top 10 here. Let me go back to the beginning. All right. Here's your rich list for this week. Benito 2030 moving up to position 49. Ethical Trade sitting at 50. Scientist with an S at 55. 696 at 58. Set one less got a 58, and Set One Less, I think, did a double Doot kill this week. Also, Hani Abu did a double Doot kill. K brought 60. K-Brot's been steady rocking at 60. Crypto Wild Currency at 62. Turkey Troll 64. Logri the Bard climbing up at 674. And the almighty everlasting Superfizz, even though he's on break, is still at the top of the leaderboard at this moment in time at 111. All right, very good. So I'm going to move down to the first Doot of the week. Goes to Crypto Wild Currency, your daily dose of hopium. Oh, I can't wait. I held my tongue back in that thread, but I found that sentiment bizarre too. Let's see what the context is. The context of why they were holding their tongue. Show the parent comment. I just want to make sure. Okay, Stablecoin originally said there are literally people in this sub who don't think ETH will succeed at becoming the credibly neutral global settlement layer, and that 8K is a pipe dream, a mere 1.7x from the last cycle. This is my reminder that one does not simply own enough ether. And then Crypto Currency says, I held my tongue back in that thread, but I found that sentiment bizarre too. If ETH development were basically dead like Bitcoin, I could maybe understand the logic of the market capping out soon, but ETH is still rapidly developing and improving technology, and still has a lot of not only adoption, but simple, low-hanging improvements in market efficiency in front of it. Even if core Ethereum development completely halted today, ETH would still have at least another market cycle worth of juice in it. There still aren't any ETFs in the US. Big brokerages only just launched crypto custody less than a couple months ago. Rollups and ZK Tech still aren't mature yet. The general public still thinks NFTs are an environmental nightmare. Isn't that the truth? It's been less than a year since the last proof of work block was mined on Ethereum. Oh gosh, can you believe that? It's been less than a year? That blows me away. I mean, crypto time. It's like the Herald meme, isn't it? Let's see, it's been less than a year and barely 3 months since its literal consensus system was completed. The queue isn't even clear yet, for God's sakes. There are probably a lot of the same people who called for 10K last cycle. Now that we've been crabbing for a while, they get all depressed and doom and gloom. When the bull market picks up again, they're probably going to start calling for 20K. Then we'll top out at 16, and they'll watch their generational paper gains slip through their fingers again. This is so good, isn't it? Curious if anybody else has anything to add to this while I take a drink of coffee. But that is so well written, man. All right. There was let's see, I'm not very good at checking chat. Okay, Hanny Albi was saying refresh the page. All right, we're caught up there. Very good. Yeah, I mean, here, this is all you need to know. We're at $1,800, and there were people 3 years ago saying that would never happen, or 5 years ago, that would never happen. There's no reason for it to, and here we are, crab season, and we're at 1,800. And we've got a working proof of stake thing, just like he was saying, like there's still not any ETFs in the US. Just it's always like you just kind of wear down, you just wear down mom and pop, make them think that it's over, and like, oh my gosh, it's like there's still so many people that are enjoying developing on here. Yeah, it's crab season. Anyway, Set One Less has an update on the struggling U.S. stablecoin bill. Anyone following the Congress stablecoin bill? That seems to have died today, too. The law just created a legal structure for stablecoins with actual legal protection and allowed businesses to use stablecoins, but the bill has died. Some good threads on it. Let's open up these two tweet threads. Excuse me. All right, Justin Slaughter on Twitter. It's clear from the public comments, the in-room dynamics, and everything else that the chair and ranking member want and are close to a deal. It's select mid-level staffer opposition in the Biden White House and Fed that is the blocker here. Okay, and then it says a huge breakdown on the stablecoin bill process. According to Justin Slaughter, who is previously a senior advisor for the SEC, chief policy advisor. Okay. A huge breakdown on stablecoin bill process. Odds are this proceeding doesn't get done today, and there's a new makeup after Labor Day. Ironically, this probably gives both sides more time for negotiations and for Chair McHenry to do direct negotiating with the White House. Peterson. I caught up with Juan Vargas, Democrat, California, outside the committee room and asked why Democrats walked out at the very start of today's hearing. He says his motivation was, quote, very simple. They said walk out, and I did. God, this is why politics sucks to even freaking open this can of worm. A stablecoin bill can't pass. A proper crypto bill is just dead on arrival because politicians are walking away from the table. I don't even want to get into it unless anybody wants to add something, but I don't want to open up a can of worms on bipartisan. I think the word is fuckery. Okay. Bleed donor. These usernames. User bleed donor covers the relevant Molvad VPN situation for stakers who use a VPN. It appears that some of you aren't aware of what happened with Molvad. Molvad is a VPN outfit located in Sweden, which has strong privacy laws. Molvad gets raided by the police who want user data. Holy crap. I'm going to open this article. Why not? Why not open this up here? Okay, this is according to a website called hackread.com, so you know it's true. Molvad VPN. Okay, Swedish recently reported April 18, 2023, Swedish police came in. Okay, so these are police in Sweden. Came to their Gothenburg office with a search warrant to confiscate computers with the personal data of VPN service clients. However, Molvad employees informed the police that they do not store any data of their customers, and confiscating computers would be considered a violation of Swedish law. The police officers left after consulting with the prosecutor and no further details. Let's see. Okay, we'll go back to here. Molvad frustrates that effort by not having data. A little over a month later, Molvad is forced to withdraw their forwarded port service, which I'm sure some of you know is what you have if you're trying to run a node over VPN. And there is a blog post by molvad.net going back to bleed donors saying, not privy to the exact details, of course, but it isn't rocket surgery to anyone who's been online for any length of time. I said rocket surgery. I put that word in. That's me editorializing. And relates to a controversial political content. You poison the well. Well, suddenly somebody starts using a forwarded port for child porn. The complaint is made. And now the police come back to Molvad asking for proof that they weren't the ones who produced it or something like that. The result, anyone here who is using Molvad as their VPN for staking now has to A, find another VPN, and B, wonder how long it will be before the same proposition is made to that vendor. This is where I get on my tangent about the child porn angle. Somebody could be using it for child porn. Well, you know what? The government's using the VPNs for their own security. The politicians are using it for their own security, you know, because quote unquote in the security of national interest or whatever. What about my personal security from criminals and attackers, right? So just because somebody could transport people over the interstate highway system for the purposes of child molestation or sex trafficking or whatever doesn't mean we ban the highway system. So you got to allow people to fend for themselves and introduce their own security. I hate that argument about we're doing it to fight terrorism. We're doing it to fight child pornography. We're doing it to, you could do other things to fight that, but don't take away our privacy. Period. Full stop. You know, that's just, that's my opinion. We got quite a few people in the chat. Hey, good to see you all. If you all want to unmute and join the conversation, you don't have to just listen to me and my fat head talk. This is an open forum. But yeah, a lot of new faces. Good to have you here. Welcome to the Doots live stream. If anybody wants to chime in on this VPN situation or anything else, just unmute and talk over me. I'd love to hear your voice. And we'll move on. Good stuff. All right. Prawn Julio. Prawn Julio points out the wrong ETH supply values on major websites. Oh, shoot. None of CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, CoinMetrics, or BitInfo charts have the right supply listed for ETH. They seem to be either accounting for new issuance but not burns, and or they may be doubling counting ETH that has been withdrawn, as technically the ETH doesn't ever actually leave the staking deposit contract, but it is instead reminted at a 1-to-1 rate when, quote, withdrawn. It's almost been a year since the merge and almost 4 months since withdrawals were enabled. How have they not addressed this? Each of these sites has a supply listed somewhere between 120 million and 120.7, 120.8 million. CryptoQuant seemingly has the opposite problem, accounts for burns but not new issuance under proof of stake. The supply is under 119 million according to them. Etherscan and Ultrasound Money seem to get it most correct, although it could also be noted that Etherscan has a slightly lower total supply than Ultrasound Money. It would be nice if we could get some consistency here. To be fair, the setup for the withdrawal contract to Beacon Chain make it a bit of a mess of accounting, but I feel like there should be some more urgency to address this issue at the big metrics sites. You know what my opinion is on that? They don't care. They don't care. It's okay if there's disinformation so the other people out there can spread FUD around the supply, right? They don't want to do the research or facts because I just don't think they care. I think they just feel like they can say something that's generally close and be done with it. And some of them I don't even think have a great journalistic expectations of themselves to report the correct news, and they let the misinformation filter out there so it can become disinformation by other pundits on Twitter and whatever other hellhole social media app there is, except for Ethfinance, of course. All right. Very good. Anybody want to chime in on that? All right, moving on. Scientist complains about the SEC. Shit, welcome to the club. And Edmund Edgar has a fair balancing take. Okay, I'm so glad that this made it into the weekly Doots because I'm going to take a bit of responsibility on this because I want to see if this is the same thread. I'm going to open this up because what I do acknowledge that I was speaking off cuff off top of my head. Okay, this is a different one here. I want to highlight the reply by Edmund Edgar because Edmund has done a really good job of setting the record straight, and I really wanted them to repost this in their own words and make a little essay as a top level thing that we could hold our hats on because I think Edmund does a great job. So I'm going to assume this is related to the same thing. So Scientist originally writes, the SEC writes not so subtle letter threatening accounting firms against working with the crypto industry, including dangling the threat of legal liabilities. Some unelected F-face sitting in a federal agency with no legislative backing from Congress is able to threaten private service providers to cut out a legitimate American industry using the full weight of the American government to back his threats. Raw, unelected power. Just as with the FDIC shutting down some banks because they are associated with crypto services and deciding to save others which are not. Just as with Operation Chokehold 1 and 2, unelected authoritarian power from the administrative state trampling on American rights. Watching the Supreme Court castrate these federal agencies, ruling by ruling, is one of the few bright spots in politics right now. Okay, Edmund Edgar, always read the actual thing, not the Twitter crypto influencer summary of the thing. Okay, he says, we've had some really shady cases like the Tether attestations where they've engaged auditing companies to do, quote, attestations, unquote. that are deliberately designed to make people think their money is safe while leaving loopholes so they don't have to actually keep the money safe. With Tether, they literally wired the money from Ethfinance into a bank account, had the auditors certify that it was all there, then wired it right back out. Tether made a bunch of statements to make people think they'd been audited, and we only found out about it because the New York regulator figured out what was happening and got the information into a public filing. This is the SEC saying, if you do an attestation that isn't an audit, you have to be honest about what it proves. And if the client starts lying about what it proves, then you have to speak up about it, or you could have legal liability too. I know it's complicated to have to fight on two fronts because we need to defend ourselves against the regulators as well as the scammers. But can we please stop reflexively taking the side of the scammers who keep trying to scam people all the time? Now, I'm going to go... This is brilliant, right? I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that, but I want to go into Edmund Edgar's history and find out the part where he was replying to me a few days ago. G block space, huge problem. Worrying about optimism. Da, 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 da. This was such a... Fine, take this to... I got to find it here. Hang with me. Okay, this was from 6 days ago. There's that. Nobody's been prosecuted. Take a read. Okay, this was it. This was his reply to me. I got to go to it. Okay, this is what I said, and this is kind of a different topic. This has to do with SBF, but this is also important because we all love narratives, right? We want to think that the narrative that we read in the news is what's true. I said, and this was me with my tinfoil hat talking, my gut tells me that campaign finance charges, this is because they dropped the campaign finance charges against SBF. Remember that? Okay. My gut tells me that campaign finance charges might lead to charges against politicians, and they weren't going to have none of that shit. They took customer money, lined their pockets, and threw SBF a small, insignificant bone. Meaning he's still going to be prosecuted for other things, but I was projecting with that comment that I felt like the politicians were avoiding being called as witnesses, right? Because that would just be, justice. We don't want justice, right? So this was me with my unintelligent reaction. He says, that's my tinfoil talking. It's your ass talking. He says they dropped the charges because they weren't allowed to add it after they'd extradited him for something else. Okay, so it's kind of a technicality. They've still got him on a load of other charges. So the news was basically reporting that these charges were dropped and then put everybody up in turmoil and up in arms about it. But the reality is it was kind of they weren't allowed to add it because they already extradited him for something else. Hitting someone with a bunch of charges and then dropping the ones that are hard to prove, ain't that the truth, or have some technical problem is just how prosecutions work, especially when the defendant has a good lawyer. You've provided no evidence whatsoever for your conspiracy theories. You are absolutely right. I did not, Edmund. That's absolutely spot on. I said, thanks for the lesson. I figured I was wrong, but there's plenty of data that shows these politicians took the money and many of them haven't returned it. If it's ill-gotten goods, why aren't we holding the politicians accountable? Is it because it's a separate case? There's a website here called unusualwhales.com, and they have a politics tracking thing, and it shows the Sam Bankman-Fried donations to the different political action committees, if anybody wants to find that. It's pretty cool. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just copy this and put it in the chat. And I said, maybe in the eyes of the law, it wasn't ill-gotten, maybe just poorly managed, but it seems like politicians not being held to any standards once again. Edmund replied to me, nobody has been prosecuted for taking the money because receiving donations from people who turn out to be criminals isn't illegal unless you know they're criminals, which at the time hardly anyone did, even here. It's not a different standard for politicians, particularly if you'd done some web design for FTX and got paid, you wouldn't be prosecuted for that unless you'd known that you were designing a website for committing crimes. What might happen I don't know what this acronym is. That, as far as I can see, I think is what he's saying, is that if the trustees can show that it was a Ponzi scheme all along, they may be able to force people who got paid to repay some of the money. Also, the politicians involved will balance the amount of money with the PR exposure and decide whether to keep the money or give it to charity, give it to a charity aimed specifically at the victims, or give it to the trustees. I think if I was in their position, I'd sit on it for now, because if you give it to the trustees, then hardly any of it will go to the people it was stolen from. And if you give it to the charity that's supposed to benefit the victims, then there's still a risk that the trustees will come after you in court and make you pay it to them as well. And I replied, once again, I thank you for your time and response. So this Edmund Edgar, shout out to you. Really sincerely thank you. And I hope that you continue to freaking ball out and set the record straight in Ethfinance so we can keep our tinfoil hats, in the closet a little bit more, because that was very illuminating as to why the charges were dropped and the forward-looking reasons why the politicians wouldn't have to return the money. I just had to share that. That's my own personal weekly, dude. It's not the one that A-Word picked out, so I hope you'll forgive me. All right. Anybody want to chime in on any of that stuff? But you should tag Edmund Edgar and follow them on Ethfinance, because they got their shit together. I think they must be in law or some kind of legal work at some level. All right, very good. We'll move on if nobody wants to chime in. Let me close out some of these tabs here. All right, here we go. Kalu Chorus, I hope I said your name correct, breaks news of the Curve hack. Then user Sky the 4 and user Bagogel 12 outlines some of the collateral damage. Finally, Logri the Bard gives us an explain like I'm 5 on how it happened. It's a sad 8-year anniversary for ETH, with one of the main blue chip DeFi projects getting wrecked hard and spreading to projects having pools there. Sky the 4, Alchemix got hit by this reentry bug too today, and it doesn't seem to be a white hat, sadly. Bagogel 12, so many more. Viper versions 0.2, 0.15, 16, and 3.0 are vulnerable to malfunctioning reentry locks. The investigation is ongoing, but any project relying on these versions should immediately reach out to us. Another curve pool, this time Metronome. This is another curve pool, this time Metronome Synth ETH, hit by a similar exploit for $1.6 million. And Curve just tweeted, to be clear, the dangerous combination was the affected Viper version and using pure ETH. Logri the Bard with the ELI5. PeckShield Twitter has some info. It's a bug with certain versions of the Viper compiler. Oh, there's that word compiler from JS Tears Haiku today. Main victim right now are certain ETH-based curve pools. Newer pools, like most LST pools, are unaffected just because the Viper compiler was newer at that time. I'm surprised that when Viper changed this code, they didn't see a bug in the old code and notify people. Oh, man. I don't know if anybody in here was affected by that mess, but yeah, I don't understand software coding, but Logri's question here, I'm surprised that when Viper changed the code, they didn't see a bug in the old code and notify people. That's speculating that maybe they didn't put it through as enough, I guess the word maybe is tests or test nets or audits or whatever the buzzword is for I don't know, checking that the new thing freaking works. whatever that process is. Oh, there's Logri now. Thank you.
You leave good enough alone, usually in software, unless you have a reason to change it. If the reason to change it was that the old thing was broken, then how was it broken? And did they have reason to suspect that if you're changing the reentrancy guard code, that there was code deployed with the old broken reentrancy guard? Maybe you should reach out to the people who had deployed that code in the 3-month window where this vulnerability existed, and have them wind down their things gracefully before a $40 million hack occurs. if they didn't know the code was bugged, what did they patch exactly that fixed the bug? I haven't gone into the actual commits and looked at like what the merge request and the purpose of it was. I'm just saying it's a little weird to change the code if it wasn't broken. And if it was broken and they know it was broken and then they patched it, not to do any outreach seems irresponsible. So between those two, I mean, it could be an honest enough mistake. I haven't gone into the details enough. But if I'm changing the security function of my compiler at some point, right, that's the type of thing where I'd carefully look at the change and say, oh, this is how it used to work. This is how we're fixing it. Now, what code was built with Viper and deployed to chain between these date ranges? Maybe reach out to those teams and let them know. Redeploy their contracts if it's mutable.
Logri, what is Viper?
Okay, so there's a common there's a common execution language called EVM. It has opcodes. It's like addition and subtraction and moving things around and receiving ETH and callbacks for ETH and all the stuff that you see the contracts do. There are languages that compile down to that thing. So you can think of it as there's opcodes. Like let's say opcode 1 was add, and opcode 2 is subtract two things, right? There are languages where you could say like, oh, Solidity is A plus B, and then Viper might have like, infix notation or something, plus AB. It's just different ways of representing it in text that ultimately translate down to these opcodes. Everything that's running on Ethereum eventually is running on the EVM opcodes. But you could represent the opcodes in higher level forms more abstractly. And it's far more friendly to look at when you do so. And the translation from A to B is called compilation. So this is just like any other software language. If I was to take C#, right, I could have like my class, my functions, whatnot, and at the end of the day, my processor has no idea what those things are. So there's a translation from what a class is down to something that my processor does understand, which is like register opcodes of like addition and moving things from register 1 to register 2 or pulling things from RAM back and forth. Like it's exactly the same concept. We have, at the end of the day, your processor has an opcode on it and a couple operands that opcode applies to. And then people build higher level language and higher level language on top of it. Just a series of abstractions the whole way up until you get to something that's actually fairly easy to code by intention, as opposed to code by what the underlying implementation is. And that allows everyone to be a lot more effective. And it allows us, again, to code by intention, so the code is a lot more understandable, makes it more secure, and the compiler can do a lot of optimizations between A and B, things where you don't know that it's actually doing something more efficient than what you're telling, or what you think a brute force or dumb translation would be. They can sometimes figure out like corner cases that like don't have to be executed at all. There's a bunch of very fancy work that's gone into compilers in the last 50 years. But for the EVM, there are two main languages. There's Solidity and there's Viper. Solidity is the far more known one.
Got it.
Viper is the minority one, but there's a culture in Ethereum of not having everyone dependent on any one tool. So if Solidity was the only compiler around and there was something wrong with Solidity, or like the Solidity team started to ask for ransom money or something, right, it would just be bad for the ecosystem.
Got it.
So just like we have clients for execution and consensus, we kind of want to have multiple compilers around, so we don't have too much dependency on any one tool. There's other options around for the community to go to if tool 1 breaks or becomes evil or whatever happens, right? Becomes owned by the government, whatever it is. So it is unfortunate, but it's also weird to think that if you were to take the exact same Curve code today that got hacked and deploy it, it wouldn't be bugged. The bug isn't in the code, right? The bug is in the compiler of the code, which I've never seen something like that happen in blockchain before, and certainly personally wrecked me. So such is life.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's all right. I mean, it hurts, but it's I'll live.
Yeah, it's the Wild West still, isn't it? It's kind of like somebody. It's like the firmware on the transmission is bad, but the driver just wants to get from point A to point B, and there wasn't a problem before, and then somebody figured out how to hack it. It looks like.
Yeah. So this was a bug that existed from July until August of 2019. We are now 4 years later. That was just sitting on the blockchain, undiscovered for 4 years, as Curve went from like a couple hundred million up to like $20 billion of TVL. If someone had discovered it at the peak, it'd have been far more damaging than now, actually, right? And just the fact that someone came across it 4 years later, it reminds me of like Linux's Heartbleed bug or something, right? Or in my monetizing honesty post, I talk about trust. And one of the things that you know about software is you can never perfectly trust software. It doesn't matter if it's been around for 20 years, it can still have a bug. It doesn't matter if it's been looked at by 1,000 people, it can still have a bug. You can never perfectly trust software, but we heuristically trust it. The factors by which we heuristically trust it tends to be something like how long has it been around, how many eyes have been upon it, and how big is the hack opportunity. And if you look at this hack from those axes, right, this was one of the safest liquidity farming things to do in DeFi, right? And up in smoke.
Would you
now,
say
it's
now?
Hilarious. Good.
Would you say now it's safer than ever? Now that this is done?
I would say that clearly a lot more eyes have been on the re-entrancy opportunity of Curve contracts. And if the hack opportunity was going to exist on Curve, it would already have been exploited, because once one hacker did it, you can bet North Korea spent the last week looking at re-entrancy guard stuff for everything that's been deployed on the blockchain, right? They will have looked at everything that takes ETH as an input again, and looked at the compiler of various versions. And when there's this much money to be gained by it and you're evil, it's going to put some very smart people, evil but smart people, are going to look at this in excruciating detail, because, well, what's the Lazarus arm already hacked? It's well over 100 million. So they've got the funds to hire some smart people on salary, and they got nothing better to do than spend like 1,000 people all day looking at this for every possible angle and coming at it. You can think of it as the bounty of last resort, right? Sort of bug bounty of last resort. And unfortunately, yes, I was paying the bug bounty this time.
What about blockchain analytics? Have they determined where the money went?
They have. So a bunch of the ETH went off to Tornado Cash, which is gonna... The thing is, you can launder, 20, 50 ETH through Tornado Cash a given day. You can't launder $20 million. It's just, you can pull out a salary from Tornado Cash reasonably anonymously, but you can't just turn 20 million to fiat without it being fairly obvious if you moved it. So I know that the 5,000 they stole out of Alchemix, that got whisked directly in Tornado Cash, and that money is probably inaccessible. But there is also a chain where the ETH come from that he used to execute the transaction with the flash loan. You can't borrow the ETH in the flash loan. You ultimately have to have ETH in the account to pay for the transaction before someone's going to, before a validator is going to include it in the block. So that ETH came from Binance. Now, Binance, in theory, has KYC, but that doesn't mean it isn't like a stolen identity or something else, but it is a lead. So we're going with that. Another thing is there was a front-run bot, coffeebabe.eth, that is just a generic thing that says, hey, it's looking for MEV opportunities, saying that transaction looks profitable. I'm going to submit the exact same transaction with higher gas. And when the Curve ETH pool got exploited, the attacker submitted the transaction, and the generic front-run bot submitted it with higher gas and stole the ETH first. And then Coffee Babe returned the ETH. So that got like $10 million back that otherwise would have been gone.
That is crazy.
Right? Isn't that's quite a
opportunity. It's just such a different world than 20 years ago to have like bots battling financial shit like this on.
Yeah, well, it shows that the attacker was in a hurry once the first hack had occurred. So remember this JPEG protocol got hacked first, which is kind of odd because that was not the biggest hack opportunity, right? The Curve stuff was. But once he had executed that, it became a race where someone, like PeckShield, is always looking for who's doing fancy stuff with flash loans, because that's like prime opportunity for hacking. It's really easy to scan the blockchain for that, right? So the second that hits the mempool, they go like alert, right? They like literally get a text. This just happened. Someone goes to their computer and clicks that, looks at the Etherscan logs once it fires, and then they figure out how it's happening, what contracts it's on, how they get into it, right? And that's a much smaller search area than the whole blockchain. So this is at that point, it's a race, because PeckShield's going to say, so this just happened and how it's happened, and here's where we think other affected things are, and they're going to reach out and they're going to say, hey, you better white hack yourself real quick, right? They'll reach out to the affected protocols and try and work with it's kind of like if you hack a DNS on the internet, there's like a response team that takes this duty kind of personally. That's going to stop North Korea from hijacking, uporn.com and sending it over to whatever they want. So there's this group of people in blockchain that are white hat that take this very seriously, that are basically on call 24/7 in case something like this happens, and they work with affected protocols to try and minimize the damage of the hacks, right? So they notified Curve and they notified Alchemix, and Alchemix had 3 transactions to do. The first was to pull their Convex stuff. The second was, now that you have the Convex LP unwound, it was to withdraw the ETH, and the third was to withdraw the AL ETH. 2 of the transactions got through. Then the hacker raced them and got in on the third one. It's that's where the whole came. It's just a pure down to the seconds. They lost $10 million by being not 15 seconds faster because their multi-sig had to click some buttons or whatever, right? But that's the timeliness we're talking about. And then in other cases, the MEV bots stole it. Right, and the MEV bots paid some enormous tips. So the Rocket Pool smoothing pool got like a 300 ETH tip or something. But 99% of the time, when you see some absurd kind of tip going on, it's because of crime, right? And it opens up this kind of interesting debate that I've had with people in finance before, where, okay, you show up at the bank, someone gives the Uber a $500,000 tip in order to be the getaway driver. Is the Uber driver responsible? Are they legally liable for driving away with someone's money?
Oh, that's right. Somebody was reporting that block reward. It was like $1 million, a block reward or something during that exploit stuff you were talking about. Gosh, dog. You're I feel like I say this with complete empathy, but Logri, you're like fucking Liam Neeson on Taken, and they just stole from you, and you got a particular set of skills here, following the news and figuring this out. I hope anybody, even if you feel hopeless in getting your money back, do make a police report. I fully recommend it because it starts a paper trail. And it makes it easier for you to claim if there's any recovery of funds down the road. You never know. It has worked for me. I haven't got my money back, but I'm named as a victim that restitution will be paid back to due to my hack. But yeah, even if it's when you go to the police station to do your police report, you literally have to take the detective's pen and fill it out yourself because they just won't know how to put it into words what you're talking about. I can't imagine Logri, your police report.
Yeah,
It's gonna look
I'm
like
not going to my local police municipality for that. I'm going to the FBI because it's interstate finance, right?
Right, but you can do both. And it's just a formality at the local level, but it starts the chain. And when you go to the FBI, they'll probably gonna say, did you already file a police report? So if you haven't done so, I mean, I'm just saying, it's just what I was told. So, yeah.
Doesn't hurt.
Good luck. It does not hurt. It starts a paper trail in 2 different jurisdictions. In fact, in my particular personal exploit, I was helped by something called the React Task Force. It's like a regional, state, local, federal, multi-jurisdictional cyber crimes unit. So it's one part Washington, one part local police, and one part state of California, crime syndicate stuff. It's pretty incredible. The REACT is an acronym, REACT. You can look it up. You can actually reach out to them, Logri, as well. And if you contact them and you have a police report and you have an FBI like thing started, when you go to the REACT task force, what they do is they compile all of the different victims in different jurisdictions, and especially if you have blockchain data, that they can put all that together. And they were able to get my wallet addresses off of Kraken and tie it to the guy that hacked me. So even though this shit went to Tornado Cash, all that stuff matters in terms of forensics. So I wish everybody the best of luck with that. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in, or Luggery, if you had anything you wanted to put a pin on that before we move on.
No, I'll just say I'm following it. I mean, the chance of getting the money back is slim, but it's happened before.
Yep.
Like the Euler hack that happened earlier this year, everyone got their money back despite that being relatively high profile. So it's not impossible. There's a Binance lead, there's he could mess up something on withdrawing it from Tornado Cash, and that could create a new lead.
100%.
It's possible he's going to end up like that guy that was in Silk Road and was like living in his parents' basement in Georgia despite having $5 million in Bitcoin he couldn't touch because he'd get caught.
Yep. Yeah.
This might not make this guy's life any better. It might just make it worse. And he might harm me and never see any benefit, just have to live in his parents' basement with, $20 million of ETH and Tornado Cash you can't touch. That'll be fine.
Even if you can't get any money back, the fact that law enforcement has a paper trail and they have victims, that definitely helps in helping to find the person responsible or a group of people responsible. And it also, when you have more victims, you have more charges, right? So you can get more counts. So if they manage to catch this person, the number of victims and the amount of data that they have at their disposal, even if you never got zero back, it all adds up on the legal side for criminal damages and all that stuff. Good luck with that. Astafari 12 discusses the regulatory threat. This is a cross post, looks like, from our cryptocurrency. This is why I check RCC from time to time. That, and sometimes the quote story posts interest me. Their knowledge of crypto is very superficial, but they are often on track with general news. So apparently, quote, protect self-custody, unquote, passed in a committee. Every Republican voted in favor and every Democrat against. Shocker. I am not from the U.S., so didn't understand how the process works, and I see few do on Reddit, but it's basically like this. After a committee approval, it then needs to be passed in Congress by a majority, then in the Senate by 60%, and then Biden needs to actually sign it. He can veto, and it would then take a 2/3 vote to overturn. Vetoes are rare. Biden has 6. The regulation side probably interests me more than most here. So far, Ethereum is mostly only used for DeFi today, not gaming, betting, insurance, tokenization of real-world assets, etc. NFTs may be the second use case, but doesn't interest me. If DeFi were banned, or I thought it would be, I wouldn't hold ETH anymore since I thought other assets would appreciate more. For example, I never bought any Monero. It's a regulatory nightmare in my opinion. The US market is the most important because it has the most capital. Being a large country and a lot of foreign investments. We buy stock in your companies, mostly tech. I doubt you invest much in foreign companies. Very often, the Western world also try to follow or even copy U.S. regulation. I used to be interested in flying drones in 2021 in my country, Sweden. Introduced new laws that were an exact copy of the U.S. rules. You have the nice round number, 400 feet as a height limit. We have 120 meters, which is the equivalent in feet, and we adopted the rest too. If you sanction Iran, our companies have to comply. If you close your country due to Corona, we do the same, which I think was the correct decision. There are so many things we would never do first, but if you do it, U.S. people, we do it too. You lose a little bit of faith in your politicians when you become aware of this. We have clear and decent crypto rules, but they could change quickly from outside pressure. We are still a progressive country with a few, quote, backwards thinkers, unquote. So that compensates a bit, though. I don't think the U.S. will ban DeFi. I think it is more likely than in 2020, but I think more red tape is coming, and some of it can be impossible to live up to for Americans, like KYC on all DeFi protocols, making private wallets, sometimes called unhosted or dark wallets, illegal. Whitelist, blacklist of dApps. I'm not seeing good regulation being passed in the U.S. that will prevent the next FTX, the next stablecoin crash, clarify uncertainties, or allow companies to use DeFi, in my opinion. The D's, Democrats, are against good regulation that is passed by ours, Republicans, and in favor of bad regulation that will hurt DeFi. Do you want to vote on a bill? This is a quote. Do you want to vote on a bill to make stablecoins less of a black box? F no. Every D went out of the room so we don't have a quorum and can't vote on it, unquote. It's a clown show. A couple of days ago, the Senate, Democrat majority, passed a really bad bill that would make controllers or large investors of protocols responsible for what happens on them and require bank-like AML. If North Korean hackers used Uniswap, there are no controllers, but they could go after Uniswap Labs if passed. The Rocket Pool ODAO could be responsible. Sorry, I misread this. The Rocket Pool ODAO be responsible over their products. Maybe a dApp gets hacked. They could probably go after the devs working on it and punish them. Hopefully this might lead to something good and make DeFi more anonymous and less centralized than today. As Voorhees says, if there are controllers, it's not DeFi. But yeah, if BlackRock enters, even with a DeFi ban in practice, maybe none of this matters price-wise. I'm going to chime in just real quick. The BlackRock thing, I feel like the biggest player has entered the chat when it comes to all of this stuff with BlackRock, because, I mean, the total assets under control by BlackRock would, if it was a country, would be like number 3 in the world. You have US, China, and then BlackRock. So they kind of pull the strings of politicians. We'll see how much of this current political biases are going to be parked to the side once BlackRock is saying, no, we're actually going to invest in this thing. I don't know if you guys saw on Ethfinance Daily today, somebody had a great shit post. It said apparently Biden has laser eyes now, and they're selling Joe Biden. It's an official handle somewhere, is selling a mug with red laser eyes, and I think it has to do with the color of the political party, not Bitcoin, but I'm sure the maxis on Twitter are eating that up. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that, because it is just political in nature, but it's important to point out. I mean, this is our industry.
It's not related to Bitcoin. It's something called wait, let me look.
Yeah, it's not related to Bitcoin, but I'm just saying the old man is not keeping up with the memes, apparently. I'm saying the maxis
it's called
will
like Dark David or something.
Dark David, Dark what?
Brandon. There we go.
Dark Brandon.
I never heard of that before, but apparently it's a thing.
Hey, whatever works. Good luck. He's a good politician. He's leaning into it. He's trying to be, I don't know. Hey, we got a bunch of people in the chat. Welcome if this is your first time to the Doots channel. Just if you're sitting in the chat and this is your first time here, this is actually an open mic thing. I normally just ramble on and read Reddit, so you don't have to. And we're just glad you're here. But if you have any opinions on any of this, feel free to chime in and keep them brief so we can keep going. We try to keep it at around an hour or so. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on this, but thank you, Astafari12, for that. Henny Abu got a double this week. So one of them is kind of an announcement. This one, though, is related to the IRS. Today, the IRS issued a what is REV ruling 2023-14, saying this is looks like a code in the tax law, saying that proof of stake staking rewards are taxed at the time you gain dominion and control over the token. DNC occurs when you can sell, exchange, or sell the reward. If the tokens are locked, you won't have to DNC, so there's no income to be reported on your taxes. Hanny, that's great to know. So if you're staking and don't plan on taking out, you don't have to report on the unrealized gains until you sell, exchange, or sell the reward, right? Is that it? That's good. That's good to know. I think that's a
So I don't think this is much of a change from what people have kind of accepted, but it's nice that they're, at least putting out
clarity,
guidance on this so that people have some assurances. But the other thing is, I believe this is just guidance and not a specific law or rule, however it's finalized.
What was the politician? I can't remember who it was. Was it Emmer? Emmer was saying, enough with the guidance, we need statutes or something.
I think that was him.
That's a brilliant, because so often we hear, oh, we need guidance. We need guidance. And he's like saying, no, let's start putting our feet in the sand here and draw some lines on paper that are hard and fast. Like, just like Hanny was saying, when the IRS is giving guidance, it's all up to interpretation in a court at some point. It's not a defined law, right?
Yeah, not just that, but the issue is that guidance can change from like between different presidents and terms. Whoever controls whatever, it can swing to the opinion of those in power, whereas regulation has a little bit more longevity and would be more difficult to undo.
I feel like if we could just do some basic things in the United States and switch some of this over to statutes and just give people some guardrails, they could just launch this industry already. Strange.
You're asking too much.
Yeah. Service from our public leaders. Imagine that. They just, I don't know. It's sad. It's sad, and it's going to get better. I have hope. Hope is a dangerous drug. All right, Dr. Shmee breaks down Hex and its recent charges from regulators. Oh gosh, dog, I can't wait. Every time I see Richard Hex walking out of a goddamn Gucci store with 6 bags around him, I'm like, enjoy those watches for now, buddy, because you're going to be in prison at some point, I would assume. All right, Dr. Shmee breaks it down. Bloomberg opinion article on whether index funds should be illegal discussed Richard Hart and his alleged fraud. If anyone is interested in reading below, here's an economic system, or a system anyway. Number 1, I make up a crypto called Matcoin. I can issue an unlimited amount of Matcoin since I made them up. Number 2, I sell them to people for money. Number 3, you can use Matcoins to make term deposits with me. You can give me back your Matcoins and I will keep them for some specified time period, say a year. And at the end of the period, I will hand them back to you with interest. Number 4, the interest is paid in Matcoins. Number 5, the interest rate is high, like 38% a year. Number 6, this is the only thing you can do with the Matcoins. They're not useful for payments. They don't run smart contracts on a blockchain. All you can do is trade them on crypto exchanges and deposit them for a 38% yield paid in kind. So you pay me $100 for 100 Matcoins. You deposit them with me for a year, and at the end of the year, I give you back 138 Matcoins. At the end of the year, how much would you expect your 138 Matcoins to be worth? I think the main options are $138. All right? You put in 100, you get 100 back, meaning they're worth $1 each. And in a year, you get about 138 Matcoins. If they're still worth $1, then 138 Matcoins worth 138. Number 2, $100. You put in 100 for some Matcoins, absolutely no economic activity happens. There you go. Number 3, 0. You put in 100 for some Matcoins, no economic activity happen or will ever happen. You get back 138 Matcoins, but I keep the 100 and you don't get to exchange your Matcoins for real money again. There is not actually a pot with $100 in it. I just took the 100. You put in $100 and I got back a pile of magic beans that are not redeemable for anything. The pile grew bigger over the year, but remains worthless. Or more than $138. You put in 100, those MAC coins offer 38. I want some of that. They buy some MAC coins. The price of MAC coin rises. Other people see the price rise and say, "Ooh, I want some of that." Price rises further. It's a virtuous cycle. Eventually, each MAC coin is worth like $10,000, and your 138 MAC coins make you a millionaire. I think that answer number 3 is the standard answer that TradFi would give you. You bought an electric token with no cash flows ever, so it's worth 0. I'm drawn to this traditional analysis, but it has not really worked all that well for understanding crypto. I think number 4 is the standard answer that crypto would give you. This is a completely accepted mechanism of crypto finance. You have some token. The main thing is that the token does generate more tokens. You call those additional tokens, quote, yield. People are attracted to the yield. They buy the token, the price goes up. The yield does not come from any economic activity in the real world. It just comes from printing more tokens. Ponzonomics, people sometimes say. Loosely speaking, this is the thought process behind crypto Ponzi coins like Olympus, Dow, and Wonderland. Loosely speaking, it is the thought process behind many algorithmic stable coins like Terra USD. Loosely speaking, it is the thought process that Sam Bankman-Fried once described to me on Odd Lots. Quote, "You start with a company that builds a box and in practice this box. They probably dress it up to look like a life-changing, world-altering protocol that's going to replace all the big banks in 38 days or whatever. Maybe for now, actually ignore what it does or pretend it does literally nothing. It's just a box." Gosh, dog, that is a hell of a post.
I love that comment. I think it's my favorite of the week.
It is so good. It is so good. It's like you have to ignore what's right and true and traditional because crypto does. What's the old phrase we use in the Midwest? Snow breeds snow. In the middle of winter, it seems like once it snows once, it just keeps snowing, right? So
I love because I can hold multiple of those. Like he's talking about the 4 ways you could apply valuations to it. I can hold multiple of those ways in my head concurrently and just have like cognitive dissonance over it, and they both seem correct enough to me, despite giving different answers. I love that comment. It's really thought provoking.
yeah, it's spot on. It's scary how spot on it is. I hope that as an industry we can grow past that. But as long as you have one big bright, it's like lottery tickets, man. You put a big winner up on the stage and show them that. Show the world that it's possible. Richard Hex is a freaking lottery ticket salesman master. If you ever listen to him even when he's in a debate with other people, he could always point back. He always does the same damn thing. He goes back to, well, I made 1,000 people $1 million, Their lives are changed.
Richard Hart is, while he might be a grifter, yeah, he's a very smart person. I saw an interview with him and debating some Bitcoin maxi, and he just picked apart the guy's arguments to shreds.
Yeah,
it was not even a fair debate, and this was not a uninformed person he was debating. He just it was like watching when Sam Bankman-Fried had that interview with Eric Voorhees over the principles of decentralization, and Voorhees just absolutely shredded him on a matter of principles and understanding of philosophy and the core basics of ethics of these things and how the industry needs to go forward. Someone who actually understands this stuff was just debating like a child. Richard Hart really understands the core of decentralization. He just doesn't care. Right?
Exactly. He's an evidence-based scammer, and it's hard to refute it. But the problem is he
is so smart, and he has all these facts in his head just ready to go, and they're really compelling. He can create a great narrative of it. He can be like, look, Bitcoin got up here with one pumponomic fundamental. My coin has 3 pumponomic fundamentals. I can't say it's going to go up, but if it was good enough for Bitcoin, it's good enough for us. And look, I made 1,000 millionaires.
I made 1,000 millionaires.
Yep. Right? How am I a grifter? I am just someone that is administrating. I don't even have an unfair share of this, right? I'm on the same rules as everyone else, right?
Yeah.
You can say all these things. They can all literally be true, and still, it's a grift because I'm on the same rules as everyone else. Yes, rich and poor people alike are forbidden under capitalism from sleeping under bridges. We're all under the same rules, but kind of means different things, right?
It was a it was a debate. I mean, again, going back to politics just for a hot second, but it serves the point of during the 2016 presidential election, Hillary was trying to grill Donald Trump over why he wasn't paying, he had paid zero in taxes or something like that. And he's like, I'm playing by the same rules that you did to not pay any taxes either. You know, that it's in the code, right? The tax code of the IRS, benefits wealthy people in certain ways. And
yeah, I'm just smart. Right. That's why
right.
You're familiar with my double low-grade or my low-grade lens system, right?
Yeah.
They're both ways of democratizing the rules by which rich people evade taxes, right? They're both ways of saying, like, yeah, those are the rules. Let's make it so that everyone can get the same zero tax until the system falls apart and they have to patch it.
Very good. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on this before we wrap up the show here. Okay.
Yeah, do you know,
go ahead.
I saw a post about like all his different IDs and like names. Was that real?
Richard Hart?
Yeah, I just posted a link in the chat.
Well, let's open it up, shall we? Oh, yeah, I don't doubt this a bit. Here we go. Holy shit.
That'd be kind of a weird thing to deep fake. You could, I guess. But looks reasonable. If someone photoshopped it, they did a fine job on it. Right?
How, like, who is this and how did they get those? That's my question.
Yeah, I don't understand that, and I don't understand, like, what is his real name? Is it Richard Hart and the other ones are fake? Or is the other one real and Richard Hart is fake?
Hey, if people call me Logri and not my real name, it's real, right? Like whatever I can refer you by. It doesn't matter if it's legally binding, right? We have a moniker for a specific individual that we believe is not a bot, and I'll take it. How many names do you need? I don't care if you have a different name in every country, as long as I can track you down and hold you accountable. It's fine by me.
You caught me. My name is not Richard Hart. It's Dick Liver.
Exactly. Remember, it wasn't Catch Me If You Can. It was this other one called like The Serpent or something. It was a Netflix documentary about some serial killer in India. Had the same thing where he got off on the charges because they didn't have his name right or something, right? Some technicality. It's like,
This is crazy. Yeah, we'll see. I think I had read somewhere that he was maybe in Finland at the moment. And so they should be able to extradite him if they get enough. I don't know. I don't know anything about international law, but if I was him, I don't think I'd be in Finland right now. Like if you're really trying to avoid extradition, I'm assuming Finland is happy to help out. We'll see. All right. Hani Abu has a call to action. This is a big one for the EVMavericks. I have a call to action for the EVMavericks, something I'd like to see, and I think EVM is aptly positioned for us to fill a gap I constantly seeing mentioned. Digestible updates on what's happening in the ecosystem. Gosh, yes, thank you. Map out the various sectors, DeFi, NFTs, L2 modular chains, RWAs. What's an RWA? Social gaming, infrastructure, staking, development, and security, etc. So you got basically 12 menu items there, it looks like.
RWA is real world assets.
Thank you.
And those are just examples. There's tons. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't even suggest starting with everything at once. Start small and then scale out from there to cover additional topics.
So basically, Mavericks are going to be little teams of people running around. Assign 2 to 3 people to each sector. Some may need subsectors. So if you never underestimate the power of 2 or 3 people focused on one thing just to come up with one thing, every week. Kind of like how Tricky does the Doots and I do the live stream and A-Word curates and Hanny does dailydoots.com. If we all just pick one little lane we can help out in on a consistent basis. Step number 3, those people will focus on monitoring what's going on in that space, new projects, updates, airdrops, potential, etc. Number 4, have a separate channel for each sector, subsector to drop these updates. Number 5, have an additional person per sector, subsector to organize and condense those feeds and assign predefined metadata to each of the updates. new project update, airdrop, etc. Have another 2 to 3 people collate that info into weekly summaries. From here, you can monetize it to create a revenue stream, which then can be used to pay contributions, grow the treasury, and fund more projects. How to monetize. Number 1, start out offering this newsletter for free. This will help gain exposure and following as you get the process down in subsequent steps. And number 2, move to a freemium service similar to Bankless, where you offer more basic info for free and have the rest behind a paywall. Substack can be used for this. This platform can be used to, bullet point 1, use as a launchpad for EVM projects, used to push certain initiatives, help raise funds for public goods, advertise for additional revenue. Hani Abu, forward thinking as always. Cheers to you, man. That is, I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that, but I already see, like, we could use the iTweet bot, once a team has a tweet together, they could formulate it as a member of the subcommunity, whatever, and then just.
Did you just, there's a post from Web of Trust an hour ago. Just going to read the message from the Curve Exploiter because that was a hot topic. It says, let me decode this. It says, I saw some ridiculous views, so I want to clarify that I'm refunding you not because you can find me. It's because I don't want to ruin your project. Maybe it's a lot of money for a lot of people, but not for me. I'm smarter than all of you. Fuck. Yeah, sure. That's why you're refunding.
Yeah, somebody knows.
Sounds
that
like they got a tail after all.
Yeah, but going back to Hanny's call for action, the EVMavericks definitely need to identify people who are willing to, take it on. That's the thing, is we can do it. It's just the amount of will and coordination. I mean, literally, the coordination is easy.
Willing to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The key problem, as always, is having a coordinator.
Yeah.
Because that's really all that's needed. Someone to keep the ball moving, check in with people, and just kind of be a project manager of sorts. But that person needs to be the most consistent, and that's the person that's always difficult to find.
Well, you know me, if I had a newspaper to read from the EVMavericks, I would do that. That'd be fun to do, like a weekly roundup of just
another
that.
great option, create a newsletter called like Hot Topics or something. People really just follow Twitter to see like what's going on the daily. And there's a lot of wrong takes. There's a lot of developing takes that happens. So, you could just like pick the current event of the day and condense all the information into one thing and, send that out at the end of the day. I'm sure people would subscribe to that.
696 comes to mind as somebody that mentality of being able to like make stories and threads. All right. Anybody else have anything before we wrap it up here? Okay. All right. Thanks so much. All right. So we're going to wrap this edition up. This is happy hour number 20. What is it? Happy hour number 29? Yeah, 20. Damn. 29. Good for us. For August 4th, 2023. Stick around after the live stream because we continue the party in the hotel lobby on Discord for a bonus hour of popcorn. It's a fun place to let loose when the parents aren't watching on YouTube. Hi, Mom. On behalf of Ethfinance and the EVMavericks DAO, my name is JT. Cheers and big hugs from Kansas